Hello there once again, fellow peregrinos. Welcome to the El Camino de Santiago Pilgrims podcast, where we talk about planning, preparation and packing for walking the road to Santiago, as well as tips, tricks and hacks to make your journey along the way a lot more enjoyable. This week we are interviewing Karin Kaiser, who is an international best-selling Camino author nonetheless. Karin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're very, very welcome, and thank you very much for getting in contact with me and doing this interview. So we like to start by finding out how the Camino first came into your life. So tell us the story of when and where you were and why you decided to first walk the Camino.
I first heard about the Camino in 2008 when I read Paulo Coelho's book, The Pilgrimage. And after reading it, I knew I would be walking the Camino someday. And then a couple of years went by, and then it went from just wanting to do it to needing to do it. And back then, 2008, 2010, my life was completely out of balance. I had two businesses. I was working all the time. I wasn't really fulfilled professionally or personally. And I wanted to take a step back and reassess my life. And 6 weeks along the Camino seemed like a good way to do that. So I walked it for the first time in 2011.
And what Camino did you walk?
The Frances.
And where did you start? Let's get into the nitty gritty.
I started in Pamplona, although that wasn't the original plan.
Right, okay. So it was for you to have some kind of professional and spiritual makeover then. That would be the reason you decided.
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to press pause on my life and just kind of step back and take a wider view.
And on those first few days on the Camino, that's often when we make some of our newbie rookie mistakes. Is there any mistakes that you made on the Camino when you first started? And if you were to walk it again, what's something you would change?
I definitely packed too much, like most people. I think my pack was maybe 17 pounds. It was maybe 3 pounds too heavy. So there were several things that I brought that I wouldn't and didn't take again. One being a sleeping bag, mainly because now I walk almost exclusively in the summer, and so a sleeping bag for me wasn't really needed. So I get by now with the silk liner, which is much lighter.
Yeah, and I've heard those silk liners can be a good way to prevent bed bugs as well. Some people have said.
I've heard that, but I don't know if that's actually true. But they are surprisingly warm, the silk ones anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so you made a few mistakes, you packed too much, and we'll get into a bit more of the nitty-gritty of that in a little bit. So imagine you had to pack tomorrow. What would be the first 3 things on your packing list?
I mean, this is just probably only applies to me, but the first thing would be an extra pen, because I get some of my best ideas while I'm walking. Mm-hmm. And I've been carrying a pen and paper when I go for walks for as long as I can remember. So having an extra pen just in case is a must. Let's see. The second thing would probably be hiking poles. Before the Camino, I never used them, but they do help a lot. And they say that if you use them properly, it takes about 25% of the pressure of the pack off your lower body. And then you get more of a full body workout when you're using your arms. I actually slipped a couple of times going down hills the first time I walked, well, almost every time I walk. And the poles definitely saved me from falling. And then the third thing would be biking gloves. Now, I'm not a biker, but having gloves meant that my hands were protected from the sun. And then the padding on the inside makes the poles easier on my hands.
So you wouldn't get blisters on your hands as well then?
Right.
Yeah, it's a really good point actually, because I guess that you can get quite a bit of friction when you're walking along with them for 8 hours a day. So pens, poles, and biking gloves will be the first 3 things on your kit list. And moving on to the next question, when you were choosing 3 of probably the most important things in your in your packing list, which would be the backpack, the socks, and some footwear. Could you give any advice to those that are choosing those really important things for the first time?
It's funny. I started my training by doing just straight away a 20-mile, 32K walk with the shoes and the gear that I already had, and I quickly learned that none of it worked. So I went to a hiking outfitter store and tried a bunch of options, and I chose a 35-liter pack. And I've used that same backpack since 2011. The brand is Gregory. And for footwear, I had just a basic pair of low-rise hiking shoes. And I started the Camino at the end of March. So for socks, I went with silk liners underneath and then the wool socks over that. And that seemed to work pretty well.
And what about your training-wise? You said you kind of launched into a big long walk at the start. Did you modify that training?
I did. Well, I started training about 3 months in advance, mainly just by increasing the distance I was already walking. I've always been a big hiker, but never really with a backpack, so that took some getting used to. For others, I would just recommend just to start walking and really not try to limit it to weekends, since the Camino, you don't have those 5 days in between to recover. And another good tip for training would be just to vary the terrain that you're walking on, so not walking exclusively on pavement, but throwing in some hills and natural trails, rocks. Another thing that worked for me was to wear the hiking shoes all day long for several days in a row, because that gives you a good sense of how they're going to work.
Even when you're walking around the house, for example.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's a really good idea, actually. So, and I love the idea that you said about getting used to different terrains, because you will experience different terrains on all portions of the Camino as well.
Right.
Obviously, there's going to be mountainous terrain. You're going to be walking through fields. Like you said, you slipped over some when you were going downhill. Maybe that was on some shale. And there's always the walking, sadly, sometimes along the roadside as well. So that's actually a really good tip and one we've not heard before. So thank you so much for that, Karen. And I know you've written some books about the Camino, and one is coming up on my Amazon search right now, and it says El Camino hacia tu interior. So walking towards your inner Camino. So we talk a lot about the preparing physically, but how can someone prepare maybe mentally and spiritually for the Camino?
I think it's helpful to have an idea of why you're going, although it's not critical, but sort of the inner why. Like if you have some bigger questions in your life that you're wanting to have answered, or just sort of what's your intention for the Camino, because a pilgrimage in many ways is very different from a vacation or just an excursion. And that it's that inner experience that makes a difference between just kind of a long distance walk and a pilgrimage. So that book in particular is full of things to either inspire you or amuse you along the way when you're in a rough spot. You can just turn to any random page and have something there to contemplate or to inspire you. So
it's got some meditations for the road.
Yeah.
And if you do already know your questions along the way, say, for example, you knew that you needed to, you were looking for a professional shift. Any advice on how someone can arrive at some clarity that they're looking for?
I think the easiest way to arrive at any kind of clarity, and this might sound strange, but to sort of minimize, it's really about stepping out of your routine and kind of getting out of your head. And so the fastest way, at least for me, to do that is to sort of minimize the digital devices on the Camino. Because it's just so easy to, and it's convenient, obviously, to have your cell phone there with you, or even plugged in with earbuds. But if you do either of those things, you're kind of taking your daily life with you on the Camino. And for me, the beauty is really to put all of that on pause and just step into the unknown. And it's when you're in that sort of unknown, potentially uncomfortable place that you could get a lot of those answers, and you can sort of tap into that smaller intuitive voice that you might not otherwise hear if you're sort of overriding it with, earbuds or your phone or social media or whatever while you're on the trail.
Okay, well, I'd like to, if I may, circle back to that question before we finish and ask maybe what you decided, what changes you decided you were going to make, and what you found out about yourself and your own path in life by doing those things. So we'll circle back to that, because I think that's a nice way to end the podcast, and we can kind of see a start to beginning and an end to your Camino. And also we can also bring in the other book you've written about the Camino, which is about preparing for life after the Camino, which is often the toughest part for most people. I know that was a really tough part for me as well after my first Camino. Now, back onto the road now. Let's look at some foot care routines. Anything that helped you keep your feet healthy along the way, or prevent or cure blisters or any other ailments?
Yeah, I didn't actually get blisters until week 3, which I thought was interesting. Most people tend to get blisters straight away, but I think the mistake that I made was only in going a half size bigger than normal for the shoes. Because your feet swell, and then I had those thicker wool socks, I probably would have been better off going for a full size bigger. And I ended up badly bruising 2 of my toenails by the end of it, and then those toenails fell off later once I came home, so that was not great. And then for my second Camino, I switched to hiking sandals, and now that's the only thing I walk in because they're lighter and they're easier to air out and clean, and I don't get blisters with them, but that's not to say that others won't get blisters. It's just what has worked for me.
And moving on to let's ask you about a favourite albergue that you've got along the way as well. One that
that's such a tough one.
I know it's a tough one. It's like saying, what's your favourite city in the world, or Beatles song, or something like that. But imagine you had to recommend an albergue. I mean, you've said you walked the Frances, and what was your second Camino?
They've all been, I've had 4, and they've all been on the Frances.
All been on the Frances.
For a variety of different reasons.
Okay. Right. So let's put you on the spot then and see if you can recommend one on the Frances.
Okay, on my first Camino, I didn't bring a phone or a camera, and I was actually ripping the pages out of the guidebook as I went, so I didn't keep track of where I stayed. But
you know what? You and I have done similar things on the Camino. I was so obsessed with the weight of my backpack.
I was obsessed.
That I was actually ripping out the pages that I'd already walked in my guidebook, which is OCD, I know, but it was. Okay, and you're also.
Yeah, but I do remember one. I do remember that there was a municipal albergue, and I think it was in Asofra, which had,
I've stayed there too.
Which had only, it had only 2 beds to a room instead of 10 or 20.
Yeah.
Which was a nice change of pace. And then, by that point, you've made plenty of friends to pair up with, so it's not weird being in a small room with just one other person. So that was a nice one. And
it's also got a really, really nice outdoor area, if I remember rightly, in Asofra.
Yeah, I think there was a little fountain or something where you could put your feet in, maybe. I liked it.
Okay, as always, I put all the links for these places on our Facebook page, which is Camino de Santiago Pilgrims Podcast. And if you go on there, I'll put a link to the albergue in Asofra. And like I say, instead of being in a big hall of 100 bunk beds, you're paired off into rooms where there's 2 single beds in each room, and it's actually a very pleasant experience after you've been sharing.
Yeah, no bunk beds.
No bunk beds. I mean, you definitely get the short straw if you end up in the bottom bunk, I think. I don't know, it depends on what you prefer. There's just a bit more air up in the top bunk. But is there any of your albergue experiences, any stories that stand out for you? I mean, we had an American lady that spoke about how someone dropped their nuts in the middle of the night onto her in the bottom bunk, then woke her up and asked for their nuts back. I don't know, any funny experiences that you saw in the albergues? Anything that springs to mind that stands out?
Oh gosh, no, for funny ones, nothing comes to mind. I do remember in the first week or so on that first Camino that I got to an albergue, and I don't think it might have been a private albergue. I don't remember. But they had a laundry service. So I thought, oh, fantastic. I'm going to have my clothes properly cleaned for once. Because with the hand washing, they only get so clean. And so I give them to the owner, and a couple of hours later, I get the clothes back. And they were so nicely folded, and the owner gave them to me with such kindness. I almost burst into tears because not only were they washed, but they were machine dried, which is a rarity along the Camino. So they were just perfectly nice and fluffy. I don't know. Only if you've walked the Camino can you relate to the story, because, nowhere else would you burst into tears over this. But, it was wonderful.
Ordinarily, you wouldn't be bursting into tears at that. What do you think the reason is for that?
It was not only just the clothes, but it was just the level of kindness with which the owner, I guess it was the owner, gentleman, he presented me my clothes as if it were some sort of, prize.
Artifact. He blew the dust off them. And
Yeah,
said,
it was a
"Here they
combination of just
Yeah.
the kindness. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people often go above and beyond on the Camino, and locals and your fellow pilgrims alike. And I think that's one of the reasons people become so addicted to it, because, and in many ways, it makes you wish that was the norm, not the exception in everyday life. And when you do experience that on the Camino, and it's someone that you've never met before, someone that doesn't know you, they've got no motivation, no ulterior motive, no personal agenda, apart from, I'm going to help this person and make their pilgrimage better. And that's something so pure, I think.
Yeah, it's humbling, really.
Yeah, it's very, very humbling. And I mean, it brings me back to a story. I remember I was in Hospitale del Orbigo, and I rocked up in this albergue early morning, and this guy was cooking for me, and he kind of invited me to sit at the table with him, and I sat down with him, and he cooked this whole lovely meal, and I thought it was for him, and I was just joining him for a drink and a hello. Next thing I knew, he just set down the whole kind of pan of food that he'd cooked for me and said, "Help yourself, it's all yours." And
wow,
I was like, wow. Like, I actually felt bad. I felt bad accepting it. And that's really hard for you to come to terms with, that level of kindness and unconditional kindness as well, and love that you get from strangers on the Camino. And I think that's one of the reasons why, like I said before, it becomes so addictive as well on the Camino. So thank you very much for sharing that lovely story, Karen. Mm-hmm. Moving on from albergues, your favourite albergue, what about a favourite town, city or village along the way? Maybe a hidden gem, maybe somewhere off the beaten track, a place that stands out for you, and why?
Probably my favorite from the first Camino was Carrión de los Condes.
Nice place.
Now, part of that might have been because it was at the end of a very long day on the Meseta, but it does have a certain charm. It's not huge like León or Burgos, but it's not tiny either. So for me, it was just right. It had a lot of places to eat, a lot of dinner options, and I remember it having a fantastic bakery. Yeah, that was probably my favorite from the first Camino.
Yeah, that stands out for me as well, Carrión de los Condes. And being right in the middle of the Meseta, you've probably more often than not had a really long and hard day to get there. So it's kind of a relief when you arrive there. But it's a pretty little town as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's larger than I thought that it would be, coming from the smaller towns prior. But yeah, it was nice and refreshing.
Yeah, okay, so Carrión de los Condes is your recommendation, and the albergue in Sofra is your recommendation for somewhere to stay. And what we're going to do now is we're going to have a few quick fire questions. So I'm just going to put these out there. You're going to answer with short, sharp answers, and we'll fly through these before we get back to the main conversation, all right?
Okay, so, I'm ready.
Yeah, are you ready? Hanging on for dear life?
Yes.
Let's do this. Okay, so your favorite Camino blog or book?
Book would be The Pilgrimage, but mostly because it introduced me to the Camino. I didn't read too much before going because I didn't want to be influenced by others' experiences. But let's see, since then, since I've been back, the best Camino book I've read is probably The Great Westward Walk by Anston Gonzalez.
Okay. He's someone else mentioned that. Writer. Someone else mentioned that recently as well. And
Antxon.
Right, okay. I'll definitely find that up. And just in case if you can't get your hands on that one, you could also find Your Inner Camino by Karen Kaiser, and After the Camino by Karen Kaiser as well. So look those up as well. Did you like the way I just kind of seamlessly put that in there?
Yeah, that was wonderful. Thanks.
Your favourite Camino vlog and or film?
There are a lot of good films and documentaries, but what I always recommend to people is that they wait until after they come back to see them.
All right, okay.
I was lucky enough to do the Camino before the movie that everybody refers to, and it was just nice to be able to compare my own unique experience with it after. So I don't know. I think it's kind of a good approach to do the Camino with beginner's mind and not knowing everything about it in advance.
Yeah, not having some.
So that's kind of a way of not answering that question.
No, but you still got the recommendations, but it was also a good recommendation to watch the film afterwards, and then you can kind of compare it rather than hold it up against it. What about your favorite food and or drink on the Camino that you'd recommend people try?
I used to be in the wine business, so I'm going to have to go with the wine. I really like the red wine from the Bierzo region that's made from Mencia.
Villafranca del Bierzo, that you find good wine there as well. Yeah, okay. So make sure you try the wine in El Bierzo, Villafranca del Bierzo. One thing you wished you'd packed with you on your first Camino, you got along the way and thought, I should have brought that.
Let's see. I don't think there was anything that I missed since I obviously brought too much. But one thing I brought that I wish I had used more was a small notepad. Because I didn't have the phone or the camera, I think it would have been nice to have taken more notes along the way, which I did not. And then come to think of it, well, I also wish I hadn't ripped out the pages of the book as I went along, because when I went back 6 years later, it was hard to piece together where I had stayed.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up buying the guidebook again, to be honest with you. So.
Me too. I bought it 3 times now.
Yeah. What about one thing you didn't need and wouldn't take again?
Okay, there were a couple of things. For one, I would say extra shoelaces. And it's funny, that's the danger of looking at other people's packing lists, that beyond the basics, like you mentioned, backpack, shoes, change of clothing, the rest of it really comes down to personal preference. But I remember looking at different packing lists and I saw extra shoelaces several times. I thought, all right, I'll bring this. Because what a bummer that would be if you're in the middle of nowhere and you broke your shoelace. And then others said, and if you don't break your shoelace, there's other uses. You could do like an impromptu clothesline, or you can do some other kind of crafty things. Well, it turns out I'm not too crafty, so I didn't use them at all. And then it was years later that I got to thinking, when I was preparing for my second Camino, like extra shoelaces, like why did I bring those? Like, when I've been hiking all my life, when have I ever broken a pair of shoelaces in my life? Never have I done this. So things like that, so just be wary of other people's packing lists, in the sense that a lot of that is personal preference.
So don't take the extra shoelaces would be your advice.
But of course, the person that doesn't might break their shoelace. You never know. But
the thing
about Spain is that you can find most things that you need. And
exactly.
And if not, somebody else that read the same list that I read would have the extra shoelaces if you happen to need one.
Yeah, exactly. And you can definitely get a pair along the way. And like you said, if you're not very crafty and you may be more creative by the sounds of it, then you'll probably end up losing those and leaving those behind with the pages of the guidebook that you don't use anymore. So
I donated several things along the way.
Yeah. Such as?
Well, let's see, the extra shoelaces, my bandana. It turns out I'm not a bandana person, although people swore by one, saying there's, 12, 15 different uses for it. What's something else? Oh, an ace bandage, which there are pharmacies around Spain. And I got to thinking later, why would I pre-program myself that an injury is imminent by bringing an ace bandage? So, a lot of little things like that, individually weigh almost nothing, but collectively it could be, a kilo or more.
Well, I hope someone got good use out of them somewhere along the way where you left it behind. They say one man's trash is another man's treasure. So let's hope how it ended up like that. One place you wished you'd stayed over, and you would if you were to go back.
I was fortunate enough to have, on the first Camino, 6 extra days to play with, to use either as rest days, or if I really liked a town and wanted to explore it the next day without the backpack. So I used those extra days in, León, Castro Jeriz, Carrión de los Condes, Santiago, of course, and then I walked the 3 days to Finisterre at the end.
You've got some really nice, clean Spanish pronunciations there as well.
Oh, thank you.
Are you fluent in Spanish?
Yes.
It sounds like it. It's just flying off the tongue there beautifully. So, okay. And the hardest part of the Camino for you?
That first one, for me, the hardest was probably the day or two after Sarria. For me, it was a shock to suddenly be surrounded by so many more pilgrims. new pilgrims just starting out, large and sometimes really loud tour groups. Suddenly you're among pilgrims with, at least for me, it seemed like bright, freshly laundered clothes, and all the women seemed to have perfect hair. It was like stepping into an alternate reality. So that took some getting used to that last week.
Yeah, I mean, that can be a controversial topic, those last 100 kilometers, because it can turn into a little bit of a circus, a little bit of a carnival, and you find some uproarious groups there as well, making a lot of noise, massive groups blocking the path. And in my own experience, I felt that they weren't walking it in the same spirit as some of the pilgrims that started way back. When that doesn't mean it's not about how far people are walking. It's the spirit in that they're walking it. And
absolutely,
it's so it's not about that. And I'm not trying to promote my own products or books here, but in my book I wrote a little bit about that, and I always felt, should I go back and take that part out? Should I not mention it? And then I thought, no, I have to leave it in, because that is a raw part of the experience, and it's one of the challenges. It is one of the challenges, and I thought I thought maybe I'm giving my opinion too strong here, but like I said, I think it's more just about the spirit that people are walking in. It has nothing to do, because some people that you meet, that are only walking 100 kilometers do walk it with the best spirit. But I do agree with you of that. That would be your hardest part. What about your favorite thing on the Camino, Karen?
Oh, that's hard. It's like when people ask you when you come back, what was the highlight? That's an impossible question. But probably the favorite thing just about Camino in general would be that because it's a one-way journey, that we're all just sort of walking west, and it's not like it was in the medieval times when you walk to Santiago and that was just the midpoint, and then you turn around and walk back. Because you're only walking one way, every moment, every second is new. And so for me, I really felt like I was using all of my senses, that I was sort of fully alive. I didn't want to miss anything. So I was, totally tuned in and like tapped into nature and yeah, it's almost like a 5-year-old, like totally full of wonder and ready for an adventure. And I think the Camino's like that if you're just totally in the present moment as you're experiencing it.
Yeah. Had you ever done anything like that before?
No. I mean, I've always been a walker, but never that many days in a row.
Yeah, it's not so amazing where every step you make and every person you meet is new, and it takes you to a new smell, a new sight, a new sound. And it's so rejuvenating, and you get that sense of adventure behind you. And it's a great feeling. What about a guilty pleasure you carried with you?
Guilty pleasure. It wasn't something I carried since I didn't take a phone or a camera, but I did enjoy a lot the croissants and the tea cookies, the pastas de thé from the bakeries. It was definitely a guilty pleasure that I indulged in multiple times.
Well, you burn those off along the way anyway, don't you? So you can definitely indulge in those. Are you talking about the croissants or like the Napolitanas, I think they call them in Spain?
Both of them, yeah. So the croissants, the Napolitanas, and the tea cookies, the pastas de thé. I don't know, I really love those.
Okay, so I've probably seen them. I just didn't know exactly what they were, but I'll find an image of them and put them up so people can look out for them along the way. Okay, we're going to move back to the main discussion now, Karen, and just wonder if you could recall a funny, inspiring or quirky moment or encounter that embodies everything that's good about the Camino. Maybe it could be a character you met, it could be an unforgettable experience with a group of people you had along the way, a story that embodies everything that's good about the Camino.
Okay, let's see. Okay, I've got one. I think it was somewhere in the first week or so. The straps on my backpack were really digging into my shoulders, and I started thinking for hours whether there was anything that I could get rid of from my pack to make it lighter. So I was walking for hours, literally for hours, taking mental inventory of my stuff over and over and over. And then suddenly something tells me to turn around. I keep going anyway, and then I hear it again, turn around. So I look behind me, and in the distance is a pair of socks hanging in the tree. My socks. I had brushed against a branch, I guess, and which apparently swiped off the socks I had clipped to the back of my pack so they would dry, and now they're dangling from the tree. It was very funny, and it was just what I needed in that moment, which was to get out of my head, because I was obsessively thinking for hours about my pack, and to really be present. And it was also a good reminder to pay attention and to listen to that voice, that intuitive voice, really, that's so easy to ignore. And I think that really embodies the Camino, because it's all about paying attention. Really, life is about that too, but on the Camino especially, because if you're not paying attention, you could veer off course for one thing. But yeah, it was very funny just to look back and, what was that voice in the first place, and to look back and see socks dangling in the tree.
So it was just some kind of inner message in your head, inner voice that was urging you to just turn around.
Yeah.
Maybe you were in tune with that intuitive voice, and that was the reason why you did turn around in that instant.
Yeah, although the first time, I kind of heard it and just kept going anyway.
Yeah.
It was the second time it got a little louder, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that intuitive voice in everyday life often gets drowned out by other things, but when you are walking along on the Camino, that intuitive voice, like you said, if you do turn off your mobile, if you do have some kind of digital detox, then it's louder than everything else, even though it's not that loud, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what made you want to write your books about the Camino? What inspired you to do that? What was your reason?
So I'm in sort of the personal development, like self-help field, and I had already been doing some retreats for those topics for small groups. And so I think it was on my second Camino that, as I was walking, I just had the idea, like, hey, why don't I sort of put into a pocketbook form, like some of these bigger questions that people either go on to the Camino already having, or that they kind of surface once they're here. And so you have something a little more inspiring to think about than like that story I just told you, where I'm thinking, for 5 hours about what's coming out of my backpack. Like, there's probably more useful, fulfilling things to be thinking about while you're walking. And then so many funny things happen on the Camino too, that I thought it could be to have something that you could just flip to at random when you're in sort of a tough spot or you need something to inspire you. And so that's kind of the idea of that first one. And then, I, like most people, had kind of a
So that's your inner Camino. That's the book you're referring to.
The inner Camino, yes. Thank you.
Your inner Camino, your pocket guide to inspiration and transformation along the Camino de Santiago.
Yeah.
You're referring to that one, right?
And yes.
Okay. And the next one?
It's 1.4 ounces. It's 40 grams. So it's very pilgrim friendly. It weighs the same as that bandana you may not need.
Right.
But,
okay.
And then, so the other one's called After the Camino, because like a lot of people, I did have kind of a struggle or challenge coming back, because unless your friends and family have walked the Camino, really can relate to your experience. After a few stories, everyone's eyes kind of glaze over, because they're kind of viewing it from a vacation mindset, because that's what they're used to. So it's sort of like, what's the highlight? And you can't really sum up a pilgrimage in sort of a 1 or 2 sentence kind of highlight that you could perhaps a vacation. So it's challenging getting back into sort of your old routines, and you may not want to take on those routines again. So yeah, so the After the Camino book, the idea was there's a section about immediate action steps for a smooth transition, and then
could you give an example?
Well, the first one would be, I would suggest not actually launching into stories and telling your friends and family about it right away, but rather just to sort of internalize your experience by just taking some time, if you can, to yourself. And either if you did take your phone or camera, going through your photos and just writing for yourself your experience, just so you can kind of process it. And if you're not a writer, then you could just speak into your phone and record it, just to have kind of your own take on your experience, which will develop over time, rather than just start in with the stories, because then you tend to just remember those stories that you tell others and not really the entirety sort of your experience.
And I wonder if we go back to the point where you were thinking about what you were going to discard from your backpack. I guess along the way you're also thinking about what you were going to discard from your life as well, because you said you wanted to make some professional shifts and some changes. Mm-hmm. If you are comfortable to talk about that, what were the changes you thought to make along the way, and who was the person that went on the Camino, and who was the person that went back to California?
That's a tough question, because I almost don't even recognize that person, 2011, that first walked it. Yeah, because my life is so different from then. And it's really a different person walking each time on the Camino. I think I got a sort of an up close look on that first Camino of some of my limiting beliefs. They're just kind of things that you sort of take on just sort of with our Western kind of upbringing and beliefs that, you have to work hard and struggle to make it, and just kind of those kinds of things that I just kind of let go. And then just other roles and the roles that we play in our lives, and kind of, I don't know, character traits that others maybe say that you have, or you think that you have, that maybe you don't have, that you can just let all that go too. And so I remember there were days where I would just sort of try on, like a pair of shoes. I would just try on different sort of character traits just to see, like, okay, well, people think I'm the shy one, or that I'm not, the first to engage with others. I'm not a big extrovert. Well, is that even true? And so I would spend days just trying on different things, like, okay, today I'm going to be the first one to say Buen Camino or hello to everyone I see, and just try it on and see how that works. It was kind of an interesting experiment, because there's really time and space to do that. No one knows you there, so you can really be anyone or anyone you want on the Camino. And it might just be that you find your true sort of authentic self.
That's really
not the roles you've been playing. Yeah.
So how did you take that experience into your post Camino life after your first one? Was that something, was you more extroverted? Was it something you practiced in daily life, for example, walking down the street and you just saying hello to people? I don't know if you do that in California, but
yes, you don't really do that in California. No, originally from Texas, they do that more there.
Right.
But actually, in this sort of environment that we're in now, I am actually doing that, because I think just as a way to sort of counter this fear that people seem to have, I am walking in the neighborhoods, and when I do see people, even if from a distance, I'm saying hello to them. So yeah, I have incorporated that.
So that's a nice positive change then.
Yeah.
It's really interesting you say that, because one of the things that I realized when I walked my first Camino, and that was, the one that provoked the biggest changes in my own life, and I realized that I was quite an aloof person, and actually if I didn't know people, even though if I'm around people that I know, I can be very extroverted, but if I don't know someone, I will definitely withdraw into a corner until someone speaks to me. And I realized how aloof I could be, and that was one of the things I thought I should start doing on my Camino as well. There was like, I should be saying hello to people, and also practicing that in my life afterwards. So very interesting you say that, and I like the way you say, like, try on different hats, try on different shoes, try on different character traits. Are you really that person that's always quiet, or is that just something you've been conditioned to do? So I like that approach. I really, really do. That it's a time, to grow as a person in that way, and that's a really nice thing to practice along the way. So before we finish, let's ask about how that experience is of walking into Santiago for the first time. some people would say, I've heard some people say it's a bit of an anticlimax. For me, it was a day I will remember forever. How was it for you?
Yeah, I had a hard time that day for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't want the Camino to be over. I didn't really want to go back to my life just yet. And plus, that particular day, it was raining a lot. And walking through that industrial part before the city, for me, seemed to take forever. And then once I was in the plaza, I didn't quite know what to do. I just stood there. Yeah, so it wasn't even that it was anticlimactic. I mean, I didn't necessarily have any expectations for it, but I remember just that last week being so different from the rest of my Camino that, in fact, on the second Camino, I stopped short of Saria because I knew I would be back many more times. So I didn't feel the need to continue on. But yeah, arriving in Santiago to me was tough, which is part of the reason why I then continued on to Finisterre.
And would you recommend people go on to Finisterre if they have the time?
Oh yeah, it was great. It was great. Yeah, it was a lovely 3-day walk.
It's eye candy all the way, actually, after Santiago, isn't it? All the way through to Finisterre. Lots of lovely forests and waterfalls as well. I remember some waterfalls, and when you first kind of catch a sight of the ocean, there's a little opening in the land. You see like a little triangle of sea, and it's like, wow, it's such a good, really, really nice feeling.
Beautiful.
So would you say the finish in Finisterre was more of a fitting finale than the Santiago finale?
Oh, absolutely. And I remember getting to the sort of the edge of the cliffs.
Yeah.
And thinking, if there were more land, I would just keep walking.
Well, I mean,
my shoes by that point were just totally destroyed, and so I just kind of had a quiet ceremony thanking my shoes, and then I just put them in a trash can that was there.
Right.
And then it felt complete.
That was that was the moment where you knew it was time to finish, when your shoes were done for.
Yep.
And for those thinking of walking the Camino, they might be listening to this, they might be thinking, I'd love to do it, but I'm not sure. Is it safe? Is it going to be too much physically? What could you say to convince them to go?
I mean, it's absolutely safe. I mean, for those that are concerned, I would say just knowing a little bit of Spanish is helpful. Mm-hmm. It sort of gives you an automatic confidence, just knowing a few basic words. But in general, just if the Camino interests you, if it calls to you, it's because it's meant for you. That's what I tell people. If you're interested in it, it's because it's meant for you.
All right.
And on a physical level, anyone can really do it. It's just, it's nice to prepare a bit before you go. But you can walk as slow or as fast as you want. And
you can also, you don't have to walk the whole 800, 900 kilometers, and you don't have to stay in the albergs, with the hostels with lots of people all along the way. If your budget can extend to stay in hotels as well, you can always do that. And actually, some of the hotels are quite economical along the way as well. So
they are, yes.
Yeah, so that's always a good option as well. Another option if those are the things that put you off. And I think we had a French Canadian guy, Pascal Auger, and he said the Camino will be the best present you could ever give to yourself. And those words have always stuck with me, and I could not agree more with that. And so where can the listeners find you online, find your books, tell us how we can keep in contact with you, and also tell us about your Camino. You've been doing a bit of Camino blogging as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so my main website is KarenKaiser.com. So it's Karen with an I, K-A-R-I-N, and Kaiser with an I, K-I-S-E-R. And you can also find my books at CaminoChroniclesPress.com. And then I have digital versions on Amazon.
Good stuff. Okay, and any plans for any Caminos anytime soon?
I was supposed to be there now. I was going to be taking a small group on a 10-day section. So that obviously is not happening, but I'm hopeful to go in the fall, depending on the global situation, because part of what I do now is take small groups to keep the Camino clean by picking up trash along different sections. And so I'm hoping to do a group of that for the fall, although there will, I imagine, be less trash than this year.
It's definitely,
we'll
definitely got a good break at the moment. So
yeah.
whether you get to go back in the fall with your group and do that lovely gesture, which will be picking up some rubbish along the way, just want to wish you Buen Camino for the next one, good health for the months ahead and beyond. And thank you very much for your time this morning, Karen.
Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.